You are now listening to the I Think I Love My Wife podcast. And this is your best friend's best friend, Chidozie Okafor, ready to take you on another journey. Are you with me? Because I'm ready. Let's get it. In this episode 8 of our bonus 10-part mini-series, we talk about sex. Things like practicing celibacy, adjusting to your partner's preferences, and how people weight it and the differences between men and women in that regard. We talk about the importance of being patient in the initial phase of dating. We go back and forth talking about the pros and cons of dating multiple people in the beginning before you're in an exclusive relationship. And I'm also challenged on why I believe and recommend that men should slow play things when dating.
I think it's only in this situation, not only, but this is an example of how men and women are different and how men and women communicate differently, because I've also heard this, like, oh, you need to ask better questions. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, nobody has ever said this to me ever in my life. But I think it's around
trash questions, and then we just like, damn, do I gotta carry the conversation? Is she actually interested in me?
It's not even that level, but I think it's like understanding how men compartmentalize, how they like to be solution oriented, and just generally kind of like how we're different to get the answer that is actually important or impactful to us. Because I think that women ask a lot of contextual questions, and like we're trying to get to the cause and the root of it, but we have so many other questions before we can like get to the specific thing. And I think that there probably are better ways to like ask those questions, but we ask them in a different format or method than what works for guys. So I think that's really it. It's like, yes, ask better questions, but ask better questions for men specifically.
Like
and
what?
I don't know,
like what is an example of that?
Like, so you are having a difficult thing, or you're like going through something at work or whatever.
Who, me?
So
the guy or the girl? The woman?
The guy.
Okay.
The guy is going through something at work. We might start the conversation like, oh, hey, so how was your day at work?
It was cool.
And right, exactly. Oh, so okay. So what happened? Like, what did you do? Did you have any
same old, you know?
Okay. Well, did you have that meeting with your manager that you told me you were gonna have a couple weeks ago?
Yeah, it went well. She said she had to get back to me on that, but you know, I'll follow up with her.
Oh, well, you should follow up with her tomorrow about that thing you talked about, because I know that it was causing you a little bit of stress, and I would hate for you to carry that, you know, for another week or two. Like, we should just really get to the bottom of this, like, as soon as possible, because it's really not necessary for you to, like, think about this. It's just taking up unnecessary brain space.
I ain't tripping on her. You know, we talked. She'll tell me what she wants.
Well, I really don't think that's the effective way to go about it.
That's how you talk to your person?
No, I don't.
I was like, whoa.
But my point is that, like, we start high, like very, very broad, trying to get a sense, trying to like get a read of like what's going on.
I was like, what do you want to know? What are you trying to figure out?
Right. That's my point. But I think that y'all want to get like directly into it like immediately.
Yeah.
Because
I think part of it is like it is similar to love languages, right?
Yeah.
People tend to love on others the way they like to receive love. And you have to recognize that you it's important to understand your person's love language and how they receive love or want to receive love, so that you can disseminate love in that manner. And I think it's probably the same way with the questions that you're asking. I don't think you would want to be attacked with like the direct, you know, right on question in the beginning, and you probably want to tell the story of what happened and how it went and lead up into it. And so you ask questions in the same way, where we're like, nah, like, what do you want to know? Like, why are you asking me 1,000 questions? What do you like? What do you want?
Yeah, I mean, I just talked to my dad about love languages, but like a couple of days ago, or I just talked to him, and he had never. Have you taken the quiz?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I take all
So
the
he had
tests.
never taken it. So it was like really interesting for me to get his perspective on that. But I agree. It's all a part of like how you receive and that relates to how you give. So definitely agree with you there. But I want to go back to something you said a little bit earlier around women sort of having sex even when they don't, quote unquote, don't want to, or something like that. It's like, oh, I don't want to have sex, but then you have sex with a guy and then you have to deal with the ramifications of that. Do you remember saying that?
Yeah. I stand by my
So
words.
just reminding you. We have an episode in season 1 about the 90-day rule, abstinence, celibacy, etc. And my dad is like, he was surprised to hear that any man is celibate at, post 30, or even wants to abstain or has abstained. So my question for you is, to start the conversation, is, have you abstained for any like specific amount of time, and why? Or like, what are your thoughts on like male celibacy today?
My mom's probably
Loaded or nah?
my mom might be listening to this, but
That's
I'm
okay.
I'm grown. Um, I think so. A couple responses. Have I practiced celibacy before? Yes, I think I went. The longest I went without having sex was maybe a year and a half or 2 years. Maybe a year and a half. Yeah, a year and a half. Two.
And why was that?
I think
If you
it,
don't mind sharing.
it started off. I did it for Lent. Not that I was out here just having sex everywhere, but for me, I think it was just, I recognized it was like a I was probably weighing. It was weighing heavily than it should in terms of like my interactions, and so I was like, and oh, you know what it was? I had a really good friend that like she just thought the worst of me. She just not like
You
in
were
a
trying
like
to prove her wrong.
not like in a I'm a bad person, but she would hype up like because she was very conservative. So she just hype up our us going out and all these things way more than it should be, and so she kind of said it in like a playful way, and I was like, yo, I would tell her like, it's not that serious, and she didn't believe me when I would say like sex is not that serious. And I was like, well, I gave it up for Lent, and then I think it became one of those things where I had not had it for so long where I didn't just want to rush to have it again, and that was probably
Yeah.
just a me thing because it just I went so long without it. I'm not just about to like random person like.
You wanted it to be meaningful.
I guess you could say that.
What would you say?
I didn't want it to be wasteful.
Oh, okay.
So
what's the opposite of that?
I guess it's like a line between that. I just didn't want to like random, but it didn't have to be like wedding day meaningful.
Sure.
And so that probably was the longest stint I've done. But especially now for me, like sex is not like it's not a motivating factor, which in some ways has probably created more conflict when it comes to dating than it has before.
I've heard about this conflict actually.
In terms of my actions, like I think it's important to have like a physical connection, and like you don't want the sex to be terrible, but like when someone told me, I think it was a pastor, he was like, when you think about how often you have sex, and he said, assuming that you have sex and it's like let's say on a good day 20 minutes, right? And you have it twice a week, and you do the math right, we weigh so much on something that like encompasses less than like 3% of our whole lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, it wasn't until I heard that, I'm a logical person, like, damn, bro, you right. And so for me, I think it's important to have that connection, because that's part of the connection that is supposed to separate your relationship, especially in marriage, from every other relationship that you have, right? And so it's important to have a strong, solid, or firm kind of connection there, knowing that it could change over time, but you need that connection. However, it is not like a prerequisite. Like if I'm with someone and they're like, and they're telling me, oh, I don't want to have sex, or I'm saving myself, I'm not like beelining it out the way because of that. And I respect it, because that's not going to be the reason why I don't meet the person I'm supposed to meet. And I think a lot of guys are not like that, especially, I think a lot of guys are like, that's the kind of like, it goes hand in hand with the relationship. And to me, it's just like not that important, partly because I know where I want to go, right? I know that I want to be married. I want to be someone's husband, and I'm not going to let that be like a barrier. And there are multiple ways to get to know someone and have intimacy and things like that without the physical, right? I think the conflict that it brings is that back in the day when, guys go out just to get numbers, pull women, and it's very much like a game in some way, or a sport in some ways. Like, I'm just going out, I'm trying to holler at these chicks, see how many numbers I can get, see who I can, not whatever it is, right? And so it's exciting to go out because you got something to do. And when you're not looking for that as like the initial thing, and then it's like, well, I didn't really feel like talking to her in the first place. I was only talking to her before because I want to have sex. Now that we're in this club with loud music and I got a strain to speak, I'm good, And so it's like it changes, like the motivation's changing. So like I'm not as compelled to move because I'm not looking for that. And so I'm waiting for things to happen more organically because I'm not pressed about like the sex part. And so it's not as exciting or fun to go out to the club. I'm not like feel like I have to go speak to someone because I'm not trying to like have sex with them. And so like I don't know if there's have to be a shift that like you get more motivated when you just want to get to know them, but I also feel like I'm equally as valuable as a person, and so there should be a mutual desire to get to know people.
Yeah. This is so funny. Not funny, it's interesting. Because what I hear from you, and this is an aside, but what I hear from you is really that you are really, like, I guess it's not common for me to hear that a man is like ready to get married. Like my male friends are not like, oh yeah, I'm being intentional. I'm looking for a wife. But to me, like what you're saying sort of exudes that. So it's kind of fascinating for me to receive. But that's an aside. But back to like the general point around celibacy, abstinence, etc. To be clear, you would be okay with waiting some undetermined amount of time if you met a woman that you really, really liked, or you had a connection with, or you're like interested in learning more about or getting to know. Is that true?
Yeah, the short answer is that's true. The reality is, and one of the guys that was on the podcast said that typically, so this is what happens, and we keep it real. What happens is, let's say you are in a situationship with someone and y'all have sex in that situationship, right? You may not know what you want to come from that, but what I'm learning is that you probably, if you knew that was your person, you probably would have made it something yet. So you might be holding out on there's more time to evaluate that. And then I meet person A, right? And person A is like, well, I'm not trying to have sex, da 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 da. A lot of people will be like, well, I'm already getting sex, so like I'm not gonna even force the issue because I'm getting sex somewhere else, so I'm cool. That's probably the reality of what happens in a lot of situations. But if I was in a situation where that wasn't the case, I still wouldn't like rush it. Like if that person, like to me, it's all about the end goal right now. And so if that person is like, this is important to me, and I think it's also important to know like the why behind things, and maybe that's just me in my career. No. And what I do, because we're always asking why, and I'm trying to find out what's the underpinning reason why you do things or you want to do, and it can get annoying because we talk about a lot of things at a surface level, and we oftentimes don't hit like the actual rationale behind it. And so I think it's important, like the person with the car door. And so for me, it's important to like understand those things because then it provides more meaning to what we're doing. Because the last thing a guy wants to be in a situation is that he was talking to someone. She wasn't talking about nothing, like about sex. She's like, I'm not trying to have sex, da, da, da. They stop talking. Next guy comes and then she has sex with him. That's probably like the worst case scenario for a guy. Assuming that it happens, right? I don't think you find out about it as much nowadays, but like when you're in college, you hear about this stuff all the time, right? And so I think that's like the worst case like situation that a guy's like, I would hate to be in a situation where if I would have pushed a little bit more or whatever, I could have done it. because the next guy did, and then he had what happened?
That goes back to guys feeling like it's a game.
No, I mean I understand how you say that, but that's like it's not the same. But that's like someone saying, "I want this guy to be vulnerable," right? And you try
Then
to
he's vulnerable with the next woman.
and yeah, and someone was a little bit more aggressive about it or what have you, and then you find out all of a sudden he's vulnerable, or like you dating someone and he just texts you all the time. He doesn't really call. Da 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 da. You're like, I wish he would call me. Da da da. And then you hear from down the way that he's with such and such. All of a sudden, he talking to her on the phone. You're like, damn, what was up with me that he couldn't do it? So I don't think like.
But
Sex is different than those things. I think we put value on sex more so that it's supposed to be like it feels differently. But like all those things are something that someone else wants that they are not getting, and then they feel some kind of way when they realize someone else gets it easier than they did.
yeah, I agree, but I do think sex is a little bit different than those things. That's just my personal opinion. But
I mean, like in what way? Like, cause I mean, it's important. And there's some women listen to this on my side, and they're like, "Yeah, tell them." Like, so educate me. Like, how is it? How is it?
I think that sex really does represent a different type of connection. One that is and can be very spiritual. I don't think sex is just 100% purely physical, but that is how we treat it often. And I think that like a lot of people have sex just for pleasure. But if you think about, and I'm Christian, so
I'm Christian too. I believe in the Lord.
Great. I think a lot of my perspective is around connecting with sort of your person and your body not being just for everyone. And I think that we kind of use our body sometimes just for immediate gratification. And
Oh
I really don't,
yeah.
I don't think it's about that.
You say you don't think
So
what?
in that way, I don't think it's about immediate gratification all the time. I think our bodies, in a physical sense, are made for it and made for reproduction. But I don't think that I don't compare sex to like an attitude, like or not even attitude. I don't compare it to not getting a call back or not getting vulnerability or not getting something that you thought you wanted and being upset that the next person got it. Because it's just not for you. If you didn't get it, it's not for you. And I think that we have to like take our egos out of it, and stop thinking about other people, sex or not, as a sport. Because even if you think about the next person getting something you got, it's really you being selfish. It's you thinking about yourself. It's not you thinking about how the other person grew or developed or matured or found somebody that actually like ignites or helps them bloom in another way. You're thinking about, oh, I didn't do enough of this, or I did that. Did that other person do that? Or why did that person get it? It's purely from a selfish place. And I don't think we should think about it like that.
I don't disagree with you. I just say it for what I think the reality is, right? I don't. And again, we can live in these worlds that like what we know should be true and what in the perfect world would be right. But I just think that's the reality of things. Like I 100% agree with you in what you said. I think that but I guess where I disagree is that I think sex or level of intimacy or what have you, it just depends on the person. Some people can have sex and it not mean anything. Some people they can have sex and it mean like a whole lot. In the same way with vulnerability, like for a guy, it may not mean as much because he doesn't recognize the power in it. For a woman, and I'm stereotyping by gender, but for a woman, it can mean a whole lot to have that connectivity. And you never know how people's past play into that, whether they didn't have a parent around or they didn't have that level of vulnerability, or with their siblings or their relationship, like familial relationships. That those things are like probably skewed higher for them, and so I just think it varies per person, and I can't tell someone that like this thing shouldn't mean more to you or less to you for whatever reason. But I just think the reality is like people feel that way. Like just like I said, people are inherently selfish, You shouldn't be, but people are. And in the same way that like if you were in a situationship for like 3 or 4 years, and oh boy, y'all you get fed up and like, okay, I'm done with it. You're not pulling the trigger. You're not making no moves. And then a year and a half later, you find out this guy is about to just propose to someone. Like as a human, you're gonna feel some kind of way. Like you're just gonna be like, what? And so I think that feeling can happen related to like what I just said, sex. Like when that happens, it's just natural, whether you should or it's productive or not. It's natural to feel that way. And I think as a guy, when it comes to sex, guys feel that way, whether we should or not. It's the feeling, something that if you ask a lot of guys, they think about, probably not actively, but like they don't want to be that guy that was in a situation being patient and doing all the things right, and then nothing came of it. And because guys always want sex, right? Like it's not the end all be all, but they always want it. And so they're gonna feel some kind of way when they did all the right things because they're thinking about it intentionally. This doesn't happen, and then now, something happens. She's heartbroken because y'all didn't work out, and now she's like, whatever, living the best life. He's like, damn. If I only caught her like 2 weeks, months later.
I hear you. I definitely hear you. And my point is just that guys don't take it personally. That's it.
All right. Well, you don't take it personal when he's not saying nothing.
I don't.
Not
because
you,
I
but,
understand. Oh no, I get it. And my 2 cents is that women shouldn't.
Okay. We agree.
Great. I want to go back to an earlier point that you were making around patience, around like be patient as a guy is getting to know you, be patient as a guy is dating, be patient in that, that initial phase before you all decide to enter into a relationship. One of the episodes my dad and I talk about is around women playing second string or like quote unquote winning a guy over. And I think it's directly related to this idea of patience. And I also think it's directly related to our different experiences dating at this age. I blatantly said or explicitly said that, I've only dated a couple of new people in the last few years. And you didn't even give me a number. So it means that your number is way higher than mine. So you
don't say way higher. Like don't.
Okay, way higher is like 9. That's like an exponential number.
You're assuming, but you have to remember, right? I'm a guy, and so
that's the point. I know.
No, but my point is by saying that I have to I'm on the pursuing end of it, right? Where you are on the receiving end of it. And so it's like fishing. Like there's 1,000 fish in the sea, but if I don't put the net in there to catch one to see that's the fish I want, I ain't gonna eat. You just trying to get caught, not like thirsty or nothing, but you're just trying to get caught. You hope you get caught, but the net might not catch you every single time that it goes down. So I think that for you to to potentially find the person that you want, you have to be shooting, right? I'm not saying be a volume shooter, but
I said shoot your shot, huh?
No, you have to. I think I tell guys yo, if you're not because some guys, especially when they're younger, man, I pull everybody I holler at, and I'm like, bro, you lying. And if you're not lying, you're not aiming high enough, right? There's a level of if you aiming at women that you feel like are at your level or higher, they may not see you for what you are. And dismiss you, right? And so you're not gonna get everything that you want in that same respect. So you have to continue to shoot. And as a woman, when you're on the receiving end of that, I just think that if I'm saying, hey, every time I scoop this net to pull a fish out of the sea, it may not work. And you're like, well, this net came down 4 times. I got caught twice, right? And so I had to do it 4 times. I caught something that was of quality twice, right? And so naturally the numbers are going to be skewed is all I'm saying. Maybe I was being defensive, but I just think that men are going to have typically more interactions than women. Unless quality people.
That's fair. I think that's a fair point. My question to you though is how do you handle dating multiple women that are vying for your attention or just vying for more time? in this situation where you're like fishing, you found 2 quality women, that's 2 to 1, and they both like you. What do you do?
I got in trouble for saying this. I try to slow play things. And it may not be in my best interest, but I think people should try to slow play things. And I think not
what
to
do you mean by slow play exactly?
What I mean by slow, I think it's easy when let's say you're attracted to someone and like you get along with someone well, to want to think like, yo, it's a match. Like to think like, oh yeah, we got it. And I'm a believer in like, I need to see you in your seasons, right? And so I think me knowing that typically like after a certain amount of, I don't like to use time, because time, like you could go out with someone in a month several times, and another person you go out with them very few times given situations, right? And so I don't like to use time, but I think you can have a certain level of experiences, favorable experiences with someone where the woman is like, okay, I got enough data. I'm only going to say these data points, right? I want to now kind of put our relationship or situationship at a crossroads of what are we doing? Are we taking it to the next level, or am I going to retreat if I don't get the answer that I want? You know, what have you. And so sometimes you can slow play those interactions, or, you know, just to give it more time to see people in their seasons. Because I think seeing people in their seasons is like truly, like, I'm not in a rush. I want to get married, but I'm not in a rush to be married for the sake of being married, right? I want to make sure that it's with the right person, because I want to be happy 15, 20, 30 years from now. And I think sometimes we're so in a rush to like finish the race that like, you know, you don't really run it. You know, you don't really last. It doesn't really last, right? And if you want to use like the analogy of marathon, like if you're trying to run a marathon, you can't run the first, 5 miles at a sprint. You know, you can't run it. But in dating, it feels like we're running a sprint. Like we're trying to get to this point. I gotta get my time in the first 5 miles to be X, thinking that I'm gonna be able to pace the rest of it. When it's like part of the experience is like digesting it, receiving what it is, understanding it, learning from it. And when you're trying to sprint that process, to me, I feel like you can miss out on some things, not necessarily with people within that interaction, that you don't, that like will come back and rear its head in like later. And so I try to slow play things, not from like, oh, I'm like not as active, but like I really just want to take my time and like get to know the person and then see what happens from it. And I think you can, as a guy, I think people can, I won't say as a guy, I think people can, like, I think it's easier when you are talking to multiple people, right, to like slow play things. Where you're not, it's kind of, right. I can think it's challenging. But I also don't think that like that's a negative thing, because if I think that the more you hang out with someone, you either grow closer to them or you grow apart from them, right? Because you find out things that you either like and it draws you to them, or you find out things that you don't like and you're getting repelled in some ways. And I think to me, a true sign of like really liking someone and caring from someone is like, one, you're concerned about how they feel in their feelings, right? Regardless of if it's how your actions impact that or just in general. And then two, when you're doing other stuff with other people, whether it's your friends or someone in a romantic setting, and you're thinking about them. And so that's meaningful to me, right? Because it's also telling if I'm hanging out with other people and you don't come to mind, right? Mm-hmm. That's telling for me. Yeah. But if I just say, hey, you're cool, and I let's go do something, I don't know the difference. And I'm cool. I'm a cool guy. Like, I don't want to hype myself up, but I get along with a lot of people. And so for me, it's not like I have a certain select people that it only works out. And like I get along with a lot of people. So for me, that's an important designation to know how I feel as it pertains to other stuff that I have going on. Man, I could talk about this for a long time, but it's a wrap. We got to go for this week. Tune in next week for the final 2 episodes of our 10-part miniseries, episode 9 and 10. In episode 9, I'll spend time talking about having the right perspective when things are not looking or initially going the way you want it to go, grace of the unknown, and we'll spend time probing Brittany about her long-distance relationship and getting more advice about how to navigate that. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope you enjoyed the mini-series so far. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. Thank you for your support. Remember to follow us on Instagram at ThinkLoveWife and subscribe to us. We're on all major platforms at the I Think I Love My Wife, the podcast. Please be sure to tell your friends and also leave a review. If you support us and you love us, be sure to tell people and get more people on board. Until next time, I hope the conversation keeps going.